we could have had worse weeks, right? It's important to be grateful. We could have been
Yeah.
Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah.
We could have been Stephen A. Smith. Because for those who've been living under a rock in the sports world, LeBron did an interview on the Pat McAfee show where he basically has a response to all the controversy that's been going around him and Stephen A. Smith, where he talks about why he pressed Stephen A. Smith. He also gets really deep into what happened with some of the stuff in Miami. He gets in deep into talking about how he signed with Nike. It was a very explosive interview, I would say. Bron really, for the first time, I would say in his career, he really clapped back to a lot of the noise and not just narratives, but just storylines going around his career, especially the last 18 or so months. And I don't know, it was a shock to see him take an interview in general, because with these big superstars like LeBron, like Lionel Messi, like Steph Curry, like Tom Brady, like Patrick Mahomes, like these big sports athletes that seem larger than life, we don't see them do interviews very often. And so when they do, we don't expect them to give it up like how they did, tell their real feelings. And that's LeBron, what he did the entirety of the Pat McAfee show. Gage, what do you think about the episode in and of itself?
I loved it. I listened to the Pat McAfee show pretty often, more so during the football season. So I was unaware that he was even going to be on the Pat McAfee show, because I kind of take a break during the off season. And hearing that he was going to be on the show, my first reaction was, that's crazy. He's going to Stephen A's direct competitor on the same network, and he's giving Pat a whole hour interview. And yeah, like you said, just the fact that he was so open, seemed comfortable, he was just having a conversation with the boys. And in that, we got a lot of really great stories from LeBron and a lot of great insight about his career. Like you said, some of the stories that he mentioned, talking about his time in Miami. Some of the conversation I loved was his conversation about his relationship with Kobe and his relationship with Mike too, and how those are those are always weird relationships because of them playing in the league at the same time. And he gets into it more, obviously, in the episode, but just seeing him be that vulnerable on a show that wasn't his, because I think the only other time I've really seen Bron this open was on the barbershop, but that's kind of his thing. That's his show. LeBron just he didn't leave anything off the table. He was dropping F-bombs. He was calling out Wendy too. He was having a good time and just being himself. And to me, I think that just made LeBron even more endearing to me. Just made me see that he's human just like all of us, bro.
No, I agree with you. Bron really, I liked, I guess my favorite part of the interview was him talking about Kobe and Mike and his relationship with them, especially because he said that, him and Kobe really didn't get a relationship until the Olympics. And even at the Olympics, they were very much still competitors. And he talks about how much he regrets not beating the Orlando Magic. And what was it, the 2009 or 2010 finals or Eastern Conference finals to play the Lakers? And you could tell that's one of probably his more bigger regrets as a player, is not being able to overcome that team and get a chance to play Kobe in the finals, as well as him talking about they became really close once Bron became a Laker, and how hopefully him and Mike can have that relationship once he retires, because he responded to the fact that all the rumors about Mike being super competitive, especially in retirement, not even especially in retirement, also in retirement, is completely true. Michael Jordan is one of those people that is still larger than life. And if you're a player, he really don't want to talk to you until after your career is done. And to hear Bron be content with that, I understand it. I get it. I get it. I wouldn't want to talk to me either. Hopefully whenever I retire, we can chop it up. And I thought that's really cool, especially those three being kind of really the biggest stars the game has ever seen. But that interview wouldn't be a LeBron James or Pat McAfee interview without some drama. What'd you feel about him basically calling out Stephen A for being on a Taylor Swift tour, promoting him getting press.
That was hilarious, bro. I love that LeBron just let it all out. He said, I know Stephen A smiling watching this at home right now. He get himself a big tub of ice cream. He can't wait to talk about me tomorrow. And it's funny
He
the way
he
that he
said
talked
fuck
about it.
Stephen A said fuck tomorrow. I'm talking to you right after this airs on the Stephen A Smith show. He didn't even wait till tomorrow. I respect it.
Yeah, that was really funny that just the reaction that Stephen A had to give out, because LeBron he called him out real crazy on the Pat McAfee show. And I mean, let's be real, this was definitely a very petty move from Bron, because he knew exactly what he was doing going to Stephen A's main competitor in Pat McAfee.
It was so petty, bro. Hold on, let me see Bron's star sign. Let me see. This might explain it.
That's important information, actually.
It's important information to know with LeBron James star sign. He's a Capricorn too. Woo! Okay. Yeah.
Hey, but no, I like it though. He stood on business and said, like, hey, I handled that the way I handled it, because as a father I had to, and as like a representative for the players of the league. I think he has a point. Like, a lot of the media can get out of hand and say things that have nothing to do to the game of basketball and start making it personal. And the players really have no way of, making any kind of point against it. Like, back in the day, you could hit a reporter and it wouldn't be great for the game. You'd probably still get fined or whatever, but you kind of recover from that. You hit a media member now. Like, imagine if LeBron, the biggest player in all of basketball, hits Stephen A. Smith. Bro, it makes LeBron look horrible. He can't put hands on a media member. It's just it's impossible. So for LeBron to be like, all right, man, this is how I'm gonna get back at you. Because I got to stand up and, again, protect my son from these things and protect the league from these things, because, again, it's unnecessary when we're talking about basketball and we bring in these personal feelings, or like these personal things that really have nothing to do with the conversation at hand,
Yeah, I'm gonna push back on you on two different things, right? That first thing is, you're absolutely right. I have no problem with Bron clapping back to anything Stephen A. Smith says, especially how he did it, doing it on his direct competitor and Pat McAfee, making sure that like everybody was going to see this. I have no issue with it. I guess I'm not even mad at him shooting at him talking about it. Well, he said he didn't want to talk about it, and here he goes on First Take, the Stephen A. Smith show, going on Fox News, going here, going there, just to talk about it. He's going on a world tour just to talk about Bron pressing him. I ain't never seen nobody do that. But I also get it from Stephen A. Smith's perspective. If I get LeBron James pressing at me, you don't think me in the content business is milking this shit? Of course he is. Of course he is. Right? And the second thing, too, I'm with, again, this might be a little more towards what we were talking about last week when it comes to Bron and the whole father angle. Yes, Bron should be able to protect Bronny as his father, but let's not act like Bron didn't put a huge target on his back. Let's not act like Bron did not contribute to that. That's what I don't like. We can't keep absolving LeBron James from the Bronny criticism, right? LeBron James is the one that tweeted that Bronny's probably better than half the players in the NBA right now. LeBron said that. LeBron is the player that named him after himself, right? So you can't have it both ways. You can't say that, like, oh, let's keep it basketball. Like, let's try not to take personal shots. Like, I don't understand why anyone would do that to Bronny. He's my son, da-da-da-da. You don't understand why people would do that? He's your son, bro. He's your son. You named him after yourself. You told everybody in the league that half of y'all is trash and my son is better than him. So, of course, the media members is going to be like, oh, really? Well, this is what he's averaging. This is what he's playing like. Like, come on. That's not fair. That's a cop-out.
Okay.
That's a cop-out. That's a cop-out.
But I think that's what Bron was saying, though, is like he doesn't have any problem with the media speaking bad on, a player that on play that needs criticism, on players that need criticism. But I think it was the plea of, like, as a father, don't do this, or whatever Stephen A. Smith said, right? I think that was where he drew the line of, like, bro, you don't have to say that as a father. As his teammate is probably the way he should have phrased it. As like, because you're right. As a father, he did make those decisions to name him his son right after, you know, his name, knowing that he's the greatest basketball player of all time. Those
Not
are
the
huge
greatest, but yeah.
expectations. No, the greatest, but
Not the greatest, but
regardless, no, regardless, he puts those huge expectations alone by having that name on his son. Which I, again, completely understand. And I'm with you on that, that LeBron does have to shoulder some of the blame for the
how
way
this is
that,
turning out.
yeah, for the way that Bronny is perceived in the media. But again, I think it's that
But
fine balance of like, don't cross that line. Don't cross that personal line of.
But why can't we, like, the way I criticize LeBron, right? Because I'm in this situation, I'm criticizing LeBron as like as a father. Like, I really, like, even though I'm not a father, so take it with a grain of salt, right? What's wrong with saying like this is what comes with it? What's wrong with saying like what did you expect? Like, the gig is the gig. You're one of the most famous athletes who ever lived. You named your son after you. You pushed him to play basketball. Luckily, God willing, he was good enough to where people knew his name. You had what other 55th round pick or 55th pick in the second round got away with not interviewing with any other teams but one, not working out with any other teams but one? Like, Braun has responded. That has nothing to do with him as a team. That's him as a father pushing this stuff. And like, what can we? Why? Pardon me. When can we say to a point like, what did you expect was going to happen? Like, you know what I mean? That's criticizing him as a father. I don't think that's out of bounds for any of us to say. I think,
But I mean, like,
my point is like, my point is more so like, hold on, let me clean it up a little bit, because I don't want to sound like I'm hating. It's more so like, bro, this is the bed you made. This is the bed you made, bro.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, LeBron has taken, and he talked about it in the interview too, of like how much shit he got throughout the years for the decisions he made and for the things he had done. I mean, I think this is the one that just drew the line, bro. This is where it involves family, and you know, you could have your own take on what LeBron doing to get Bronny into the league, whether it was good or not. I guess you could have that argument because, like, as a father, you want to see your son succeed and be as great as possible. And if you can help him in any way, I'm sure any good father would say they would do everything they can to get their son to their dreams, to reach their dreams. But yeah, on the opposite side of that is like, he had to be aware of the consequences. People were going to talk about it. The same way that they talked about any of the decisions he had made earlier in his career. But again, I think the reason why LeBron is reacting the way he is because of the involvement of Bronny. And that's the bottom line, is he knew it and is basically saying like, this is where we're going to draw the line though. This is my family and we can talk about him from a basketball point of view. But once we start getting into talk to him as a father about him, and like, Bronny's not doing anything off the court wrong that Bron needs to be talking to him about. He should be mentoring him as a teammate, as a mentor. And that's the way the media should be looking at it and trying to keep this conversation nuanced. But I don't know. Like, at this point, he's been drafted. Like, everything's already kind of off the table with Bronny. Like, we know he's a Laker. He's been drafted. And there's not really much to change that. So, like, there's just no point in continuing to bring up the fact that he's LeBron's son right now, because he's not even playing. He's not getting significant minutes. But he's still doing his thing in the G League. He dropped 40 like a week ago.
No, he's hooping, bro. Like, in 2 or 3 years, he might be a quality NBA player. Like the promise he's showing this year. So that I'm not taking away too much from him. I just want to know, like, when is it okay for people? Like, why isn't it okay to critique LeBron and his decision as a father? Because it does affect sports. You know what I mean? It does affect the franchise like the Los Angeles Lakers. But enough about just that part of the interview. How do you feel about him taking shots at Brian Windhorst?
I found it kind of funny the way he did it. But like the more I've thought about it, and afterwards, it was just kind of surprising, just because of the perceived relationship between the two. I think Wendy's wrote like 3 books on LeBron, and has been like the biggest media member covering his career for as long as we could remember, because they went to the same high school, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know. It seems kind of weird because everyone thought that they were really close, and I would assume they had to be
Bron in
to
the
one
past
point.
have said, yeah, Bron in the past has said that like he recognizes Wendy and their relationship. So I'm with you. Like it's a little weird now for him to backtrack and be like, "Oh, he's some weirdo that thinks he's my friend." It's like, but you said that y'all are pretty close as far as like athlete and media member goes. Maybe you're right. Maybe y'all aren't friends. And I feel like this is a very important lesson for both athletes and media members or journalists to understand is like a lot of us are not friends with each other. Like it's a very symbiotic relationship between these two parties. And so sports media members got to realize like athletes are not your friends and vice versa. Like both of y'all have a job to do. And even though y'all might have played together at one point, y'all might have went to the same high school, y'all might have done this and that. Like y'all have a jobs to do, and not just jobs, like your relationship is dependent on each other in a lot of cases. So take it with a grain of salt in everything that you do.
Yeah, it's very weird, the relationship between the media and like players, and I think that's something interesting about the Pat McAfee show as a whole too. Is I think the Pat McAfee show has a lot of current players that are like on giving a lot of candid interviews, but a lot of the time, which is very weird because when you see, other shows on TV, more so like the argumentative sports talk shows, we don't really see a lot of current players make appearances ever. It's a lot of retired players. Um, and again, I think it goes to that conflict of, if you're playing really good, they're going to talk great about you all the time, and that you're going to love to be on the show. They're going to ask you great questions. But if you're a player who's struggling, having a rough week, having a rough month or whatever, and they invite you on the show, are you going to want to go on that show to get fucking roasted by Stephen A. Smith and and Shannon Sharp or whoever else is on that desk? Probably not, dude. Um, so I think it's also about like the setting that these players are doing the interviews, the way that the media talks about these players, because for all of Pat McAfee's faults, and trust me, that show has a lot of faults. There are a lot of reasons why people don't like that show, and understandably, but one of the credit I've always given to them is that they make players feel comfortable and let them be themselves. And we saw it with LeBron. We see it with Tyrese Halliburton, who's on the show. And that's a weird relationship because they're in Indiana. They watch Tyrese play all the time. And when he plays bad, they have to talk about him playing bad, but they just don't do it in a manner where it's like disrespectful. They keep it light, because at
But
the
you
end of
could,
the day, it's just basketball.
but
But
you could also
I
make the
don't know.
case that maybe McAfee doesn't go as hard as he probably should. Like
That's
he
fair.
kind of throws them softballs. He kind of avoids it because he don't really be critiquing Tyrese as much as people think he does. He really don't be saying nothing about him when he does
Nah,
bad.
he really, and that's the thing, is like he keeps it friendly for the most part, and like even with the Aaron Rodgers interviews, because he has Aaron Rodgers on every week, people are have always criticized Pat about never asking him hard questions, and again, it's like
He don't. He
you kind
don't.
of,
Let's keep it a buck. He really
he
don't.
really
He
doesn't,
really
but
he
like
really
you have
like.
to you have to censor yourself, bro. If you want to keep having Aaron Rodgers on the show, you want to keep him comfortable in these interviews too, make it as organic as possible. You can't ask him some out of pocket shit.
But I
You got
think
to
that's
find a way to phrase the question without getting you might not get the craziest answer, but as far as I'm aware, I feel like they covered a lot of the big things that they needed to in this LeBron interview. Because how do you
in the
feel about
LeBron
that?
interview. Yes, I think to a
And
certain
I feel
extent, I
like in
think they
general they
they
do a
could they
good
definitely could have
job.
they definitely could have pushed back on especially some of the Wendy stuff. They definitely
Yeah.
could have pushed back on some of the Bronny stuff, like how I brought up, like him doing that tweet and everything like that. And I feel like that's what the real beef is with a lot of athletes and media members nowadays. Is you're right. Back then, athletes didn't really have a lot of voice when it came to sharing their stories and sharing their perspectives throughout a season and throughout their careers. But let's not lie and say that's still the case. The last 15 years, athletes have had a voice more than ever. They've pretty much taken over a lot of the content sphere, the sports media sphere in and of itself. A lot of the big sports shows, all they do is have retired professional athletes. And so if I'm a media member, right, I'm looking at them sideways. Like, you guys get on to us for 15 years about, or you guys get on to us for how many years of not showing y'all in the best light and not doing this and that for y'all. But whenever y'all have the same exact opportunities, the same exact TV shows, y'all come with the same bullshit takes that the rest of us do. Y'all sit up there and ask softball questions when it's time to talk to another athlete. Y'all sit up there and straight up not really do your research that y'all say that we don't do. Like, I get the beef, bro, because we've all seen it, bro, with all these retired athletes. They make shitty takes just like the normal sports broadcasters do and sports personalities. But they get a pass because they were former athletes, right? And as they should to a certain extent, like, they have more credibility because they play the sport. But they might not know the sport better than an athlete and a broadcaster. And so now that they're coming into this space and taking a lot of the jobs and opportunities away from these sports broadcasting personalities, it's kind of like a cold war going on in the sports media sphere. The same thing going on with music. You're seeing a lot of retired rappers and artists make podcasts, taking away the lane from guys like Elliott Wilson or B-Dot and so on and such forth, like music journalists. So I see where the beef comes from, because it's like, okay, y'all giving us shit for not knowing the sport, but here you go, and you haven't guessed the correct finals winner ever. Or here you go with a shitty take saying Russell Westbrook was the best athlete ever or something like that. Like, I wish that both parties would realize that they're on the same team, and B, like, there's a lot more similarities than they think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It's always going to be a weird like relationship between the media and players, and even more so now that the players are becoming more involved with the media in their own ways separately from the sport that they play. So yeah, it's really interesting, man. But I say, before we get into another segment, make sure that you guys are subscribed and following the page. We are posting segments of these episodes and posting daily on TikTok, on Instagram, and yeah, it's a lot of great content. So make sure you guys are tuning in for all that. But let's talk about the Stephen A side of it, because I feel like we have spent a lot of time on this, and we'll kind of wrap it up with this before we get into like actual basketball talk. But how do you feel about it from Stephen A's side? How he responded, how he has been responding, and where do you see this going? Is there anything left for this beef to continue?
I think Stephen A. Smith is about to crash out and break the backboard, or he just did that, right? Him going on the Stephen A. Smith show right after Bron was on Pat McAfee, him going on First Take the next day talking about it, he absolutely crashed out. And don't get me wrong, it has been hilarious up until that point. I think Stephen A. Smith has the right to respond to LeBron the same way LeBron has the right to respond to him. Because right now, they're just taking personal jabs at each other. And at this point, it's a little entertaining. I don't think either one of them had gone too far. But from the Stephen A. Smith perspective, I feel like whenever he brought up the fact that, like, or he alluded to the fact that Bron was being fake by not showing up to Kobe's memorial, even though it was proven that he was there, he just didn't want to be on camera. Same thing with him being fake for not showing up to Dwayne Wade's retirement ceremony, even though he had the pressing matter with Bronny. I'm all for Stephen A. Smith crashing out. I just feel like he should fact check a little better. And if he misspoke, he misspoke. But if you're going to misspeak like that, then the second go around, you're just going to have to spill the tea, so to speak. You can't be like, oh, I stand on everything that I say. like, or allude to something happening without saying it. Like, that's dry snitching to me. Like, if you're gonna snitch, just do it. If you're gonna fully crash out, just go all the way. Like, don't get caught in a half lie, a half truth, and then be like, well, you guys are missing what I said earlier. Well, just tell us. Don't have us read between the lines. Like, just tell us. And I guess that's my issue with Stephen A. Smith's response. Because right now, it's to the point where, like, he can't win for losing. Like, there's nothing really he's gonna do. Like, we're in a weird spot where, like, everybody's on LeBron's side and nobody cares to really hear what Stephen A. Smith has to say about LeBron. Like, that's just how I feel about it. Because even him talking about the fact that, like, yo, if Bron put hands on me, I would have swung back. Obviously, any respectable grown man would have done that. And he's not saying he would have whooped Bron ass, but he's saying I would have defended myself. This would have been no Will Smith, Chris Rock situation. I don't see like how that was that big of a deal. I did think it was hilarious though that Bron, after hitting that game winner, posted Stephen A. Smith boxing. Oh, Bron had a hell of a day. That's a hell of a day. Shit talk Stephen A. Smith on his biggest competitor's show, hit a game winner, and then clap back on him on Instagram. Hey, fair enough, King. Fair enough.
Fair enough. And it was unfortunate what happened to him the next night, but we'll get into that.
What? Ooh, yeah, bro. Steve. Oh, I know Stephen A. Smith is mad as hell. If that what's it called, Pat McAfee episode when it came out, one more day later, he would have had his ass.
Oh, he would have had a field day. Stephen A. would have had a field day.
That's how I feel. I felt a little bad because I know Stephen A. Smith saw that Bron turn the ball over and choke in that Bulls game, and he's sitting here like, why couldn't he have waited one more day? I know he was hot, bro. He was hot. Same thing with Bron's what's it called? Double-digit point streak was about to come to an end in the fourth quarter against Indy. Oh, I know he was sick, bro. I know he was sick.
Yeah. And hey, that's LeGoat right there, man, because he found a way to make it work. He got the win when he needed to that night, and to swing the narrative in his direction, and I love it. But yeah, I'm basically on board with everything you said about Stephen A. I think no one's going to forget about Stephen A. Stephen A. is still one of the most influential and important sports media members of all time. But yeah, this definitely hurt him. It's losing a rap beef, basically. And he's just got to kind of roll with it now. And keep doing him. Because
do you think this keeps going? Do you think this keeps going? I know ESPN is loving this for ratings. Like, especially with the fact that like a week ago or a couple of days ago, they announced that Stephen A. got that 5-year, $100 million contract. They might have recouped all that money in that one day. They really might have. Do you think this is bad for business, Stephen A. Smith and LeBron beefing?
No, I mean, I think it's great for ESPN business. And I think in the long term, I think this will be hopefully something that helps like situations like this so that we don't have as many media there's always going to be, let's just get this off the table. There are always going to be players who have problems with the things media say. And there are always going to be media members who say shit that's completely out of pocket. We're never going to get rid of that. But I think
we're gonna get NBA, and we're gonna get players that are just sensitive to everything that media members or anybody has to say about them. Like, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, but I think this is gonna be a cool way for like players to like clap back at media members and like be like, okay, so if you want to talk shit about me, I'm gonna go do a hour with your competitor and give like my tell-all interview. I mean, obviously it's LeBron James, right? But like this could go for a lot of these, superstar players who normally don't do interviews like this. A lot of players don't sit down and talk with a big program like the Pat McAfee show for an hour on live television, completely unfiltered. So I don't know. I think this is kind of, to me, it feels like an evolution of the relationship between media and players. And we're just kind of starting, like, this is one of the crucial points of it. And I don't really know what's going to happen between LeBron and Stephen A. Like, I don't know what really is next for the beef, I guess. But in terms of, the importance of this moment in sports media for the NBA and for everything, I really do think it will have an influence on how we watch basketball and watch these interactions in the future.
Especially because the whole topic of the main storyline with the NBA this year is like, why isn't anybody watching? Even though people are watching, but like, why is the NBA being covered this way? I think this is going to be a very defining moment that maybe in the next 2-3 years, we see that this was a turning point to see how the game was covered. Maybe, hopefully, after this, media members and players have a better relationship where they both A, know their role in this, and B, can understand that maybe shit like this don't got to get too far. Like maybe shit like this, me and Gage don't got to sit here on AWR and talk about it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's great for us. It's great for us. But
because you just clicked on the video and watched, so thank you for Stephen A. and
Appreciate that,
LeBron
man.
for doing that, and we thank y'all for tuning in.